I felt ignored on Valentine's Day. He didn't even try. Later, he showed up with gifts, but they were all wrong and too big. Aftermath update. I have corrected some of the misspellings. Hope this makes everything clearer. Following the intense and distressing conversation we had that morning, he returned home with a dozen red roses, a box of chocolates, barbecue from his preferred restaurant, and a pair of shoes that were 3 sizes too large and completely not my style. I am unsure where he found the funds for this, after informing me that his account was $14 in the negative, and he refused to disclose how he had the money when I inquired. His only reply was, "I have my ways." This likely indicates that he simply used more charges on the credit cards he had just paid off. I told him plainly, "Thank you for the gesture, but I still feel offended," and expressed that I was still quite upset with him about the entire discussion we had that morning, where he accused me of depleting his finances at the grocery store and insisted that I should reimburse him. I gave all the candy to our child. The roses and shoes are sitting on the table where he placed them, and as for the barbecue dinner, he, of course, consumed that. I told him multiple times on the phone yesterday that after his outburst towards me and his attitude of being unconcerned, I truly did not want anything at all, and it would feel like a slap in the face predictably. He did not heed my advice, and it was indeed a slap in the face. I do not wish to seem ungrateful about the gifts he brought, but it all feels like a pity gift. It's as if he thought, "I feel guilty for not having considered getting you anything for Valentine's Day, so now I will hastily gather items from stores after work to elicit a cliché excited reaction from you, hoping that will lead to intimacy." Great news, I certainly did not respond in that manner, if that's what you were curious about. With his insincere efforts and childish actions, I feel like he doesn't really understand me or my preferences, and he shows no willingness to learn. I am thankful for everyone's viewpoints on this matter. They have helped me realize I have the right to set demands for myself, stand up for myself, and establish boundaries concerning how others treat me, as I have tolerated too many inappropriate behaviors for far too long, like 9 years too long. I know many people might suggest, just leave. And while I agree with that sentiment, at this moment, I am not in a position to do so. Original story. I, 28F, and my boyfriend, 31M, have been together for 9 years. Throughout this time, I feel that during holidays and significant events, something always occurs that leads to me receiving very little or nothing at all. To begin, I want to clarify that I am not a particularly materialistic individual, and in the past, due to our financial situation, I have preferred that my boyfriend does not spend much on me or simply does something at home as a gift. I am modest and don't believe that gifting someone equates to the level of affection or respect they have. I am understanding and recognize that not everyone is financially capable of providing traditional gifts. Let me clarify the statement. It seems something always happens. By providing a few examples for Christmas last year, instead of purchasing something for me, my boyfriend took me shopping. I selected only one item of vacuum for the home. It was on sale for a very reasonable price, and we genuinely needed one. However, I did not receive anything else since he used the remainder of our Christmas budget for gifts for our brother-in-law. The Christmas prior, he gave me a jacket from a hunting supply store. He explained that he wasn't shopping with me in mind but was there, and since he had spent the rest of his Christmas bonus on his father and our brother-in-law, he thought he should get me something too. The jacket was an extra large, and I usually wear a small. He claimed it was the only size available. The Christmas before that, he gave me a very college-style plaid, heated blanket for our bed. I dislike heated blankets because I cannot stand being hot, and he is aware of this. He conveniently loves heated blankets, so I suppose someone might appreciate that gift. Over the years, my birthday gifts have varied from a breakup for not answering his question while in the checkout line. I did not hear him because I was speaking to the cashier, to boots that were 4 sizes too large, to having to euthanize my dog on my birthday after a long day at work, and then paying for my own dinner, to him getting intoxicated on the front porch with his friends while I prepared and provided pizza for them at their request, only to have him pass out drunk and tell me that I wasn't fun enough to spend time with after his friends left. That last incident occurred this past year, 2024, when my dog, aged 15 years, had to be euthanized after I found her collapsed when I returned from work. It was sudden and traumatic. Upon arriving home, my boyfriend asked if it would uplift my spirits to go out for dinner. I reluctantly agreed, as I certainly needed something to boost my mood after the day I had. Naturally, I did not plan on cooking that evening. We prepared to go out, and he persuaded me to dine at my favorite, albeit expensive, seafood restaurant, assuring me I could order whatever I wished because it was my birthday, and I deserved it after such a difficult day. We seldom go there because of the expense, saving it for special occasions. Then he informed me I would have to cover the bill, as he had spent his paycheck the day before at an auction. This was after we had placed our food order and were seated in front of the cashier. So I paid. Amid all this, we have a 7-year-old child. His father, my boyfriend, has never contributed or made an effort toward our child's activities or holidays either. I handle all planning, financing, and execution of holidays and gifts for our child. School shopping is also solely my responsibility. Essentially, if the mother does not do it, it does not get done. Fast forward yesterday, I went grocery shopping and used his debit card for payment, as per our agreement that he covers groceries biweekly, just as I do. He was aware I was going and how much I intended to spend since I placed a pickup order. This morning, on Valentine's Day 2025, I talked to him on the phone, and the conversation was pleasant. I made a passing joke about purchasing a new washer. Mine is old and frequently malfunctions, so it is on my to-do list, but I was genuinely joking because we are not in a position to do that yet. However, my boyfriend has been working overtime and receiving substantial paychecks. All our bills are settled for the month, so if we truly wanted to, we could have enjoyed a delightful Valentine's Day. After I made the washer joke, he exploded at me, claiming I spent all his available money at the store. Yet he had an overtime paycheck totaling $2,100. I certainly did not spend that much at Walmart. I then asked him why he had no money when we had no bills due and my spending was nowhere near that amount. He mentioned he paid off 2 credit cards. Not just made a payment, he fully paid off the balances. I am genuinely pleased about this because I perceive credit cards as a financial burden, and I was upset that he even used them, so thankfully those are resolved. But why right before Valentine's Day? I did not expect him to buy me something, considering his history, but really? Nothing. You couldn't even make an effort. I had also received my paycheck and had no bills due, planning to take him to his favorite barbecue restaurant and buy him something while he was working on my day off. But now, I would feel foolish for even contemplating that when he hadn't thought of it at all. I do not typically get upset over gifts, but this time it genuinely stings because, considering there were no bills due, he had money, and had all the time and opportunity to do something nice. It feels like he just doesn't care. Am I being unreasonable? Should I not feel upset? He claims I am mistaken for being angry at him for paying off his credit cards, then declared that if I send him money, he will buy me something. I told him I did not want to purchase my own present, and he responded, "Well, you wouldn't be buying it. You would be reimbursing me for what you spent on groceries." I am astounded by his lack of understanding. Story 2. Neighbors' dogs kill Margot's cat. She reports them, secures their destruction on Christmas Eve, and watches it all unfold. A brief note: I was involved in this incident, but I was neither the perpetrator nor the target of retaliation. Years ago, I worked alongside a receptionist at a veterinary clinic named Margot. Margot was and still is an exceptionally kind 65-year-old woman who had been part of this practice since its inception, approximately 40 years ago. She consistently greeted everyone with a smile, shared jokes, offered compliments, and brought baked treats for birthdays. She never spoke ill of anyone. She was genuinely one of the most remarkable individuals I had the pleasure of working with, and was well acquainted with everyone from our regular clientele to our mailman's granddaughter. The only negative aspect regarding Margot, which was certainly not her fault, was that she and her family resided next to one of the most disreputable and unpleasant families I had ever encountered, who owned 2 even more unpleasant pit bulls. I mean unpleasant to a degree that resembled items hoarded by dung beetles for years. These dogs were perpetually escaping and wreaking havoc in the neighborhood, even attempting to enter her home. Margot had repeatedly requested that they contain their dogs, particularly since she had an elderly, overweight cat named Smokestack, and these pit bulls had previously attacked smaller animals. The family essentially told her to leave them alone, claiming they knew what they were doing, scolding her for criticizing the breed, and dismissing her concerns entirely. Margaret was aware that reports had been lodged against her neighbors, but no actions were taken. Therefore, she ensured that Smokestack remained indoors for his safety and was very cautious about letting him outside. If you have been paying attention thus far, you may have noticed I used the words was and had in relation to Smokestack. It was as tragic as you might imagine. 3 weeks before Christmas, Margaret had a day off and was in the garage with Smokestack, arranging some holiday decorations. Unbeknownst to her, the pit bulls next door escaped and forced their way through the bottom of her garage door. They lunged straight for Smokestack before she could react, beginning to maul the cat. Margaret screamed for assistance, and it was only when her husband and son emerged with a baseball bat that they managed to rescue Smokestack from the grip of these dogs. I was working that day, and will never forget the moment she entered the clinic, sobbing harder than I had ever witnessed in my life, holding the critically injured Smokestack in her arms. Her husband had to support her while we attempted to revive Smokestack, but unfortunately, it was futile. It would have required a miracle to bring him back, and he died. An awful way to end what should have been the golden years of his life. Margaret sat with Smokestack's broken body for a while, weeping quietly, before she eventually kissed what little part of him remained whole and stood up. She instructed us, "I have a responsibility to fulfill. Please take care of him, ladies." Then she departed. We assumed Margaret would take a few days off to grieve with her family before resuming her normal routine. We were mistaken. When I say Margaret knew everyone, I mean everyone. Immediately after leaving the clinic, Margaret gathered herself and approached the police with images of poor Smokestack and recounted her story. She spoke to the same police officers she had seen grow from rowdy adolescents she once babysat to the law enforcement professionals they became. They were utterly astonished to learn what had transpired to their surrogate grandmother and escalated her case. The situation made its way to a judge whose daughter had attended school with Margaret's daughter. The judge issued an emergency warrant for the removal of the dangerous animals from her neighbors. Naturally, there was a hearing. Within 2 weeks, which I must admit was incredibly swift, the neighbors attempted to claim that their dogs were not aggressive. They even went so far as to accuse Margaret of harboring animosity towards their family and fabricating the entire incident. However, their argument faltered when numerous reports regarding the dangerous animals were presented. It ultimately collapsed when Margaret showed the surveillance footage her grandson obtained, depicting the dogs invading her property and assaulting the unfortunate Smokestack. The request for the emergency removal and humane euthanasia of her neighbor's dogs was granted. It was Christmas Eve when Margaret heard a knock at her door. Upon opening it, she found her neighbors standing there, sobbing uncontrollably. They pleaded with her to halt animal control's actions, claiming they had raised these dogs since they were puppies, how devastated their children would be, how it would ruin Christmas, and if she could find it in her heart to allow the dogs another chance. Up to that moment, the neighbors had behaved atrociously. They didn't offer to repair the garage. They never apologized for attempting to defame her in court. They didn't even cover the cost of Smokestack's cremation. At no time did they show any semblance of remorse for the harm their dogs caused. And as the neighbors stood there, whimpering about how this would ruin their Christmas, Margaret looked them directly in the eye and calmly stated, "You took my family away, so now I am taking yours." She then closed the door just as animal control arrived in the driveway. Margaret was unperturbed as she watched the dogs being loaded into the vehicle and taken away. After all, it was her suggestion for animal control to remove the dogs on Christmas Eve, a privilege granted by her long-standing acquaintance with the supervising animal control officer. Margaret even ensured the dogs were euthanized before the outdoor Christmas lights illuminated that evening. The family never received the remains of their pets, nor were they given an opportunity to welcome another animal into their home, as the father tragically crashed his car into a utility pole that same night, killing himself instantly. The mother spiraled into despair, prompting Child Protective Services to take custody of the children by February. Ultimately, the house was foreclosed in September. Despite the trauma surrounding Smokestack's death, I like to believe that if the neighbors had displayed even a hint of regret, Margaret may not have pursued such drastic measures. She is inherently the type of person to forgive and let go. Or perhaps she understood that it needed to reach this point of no return to prevent another family from suffering due to these irresponsible neighbors. Either way, thank you, Margaret, for making the world a marginally safer place for pets. And rest in peace, Smokestack. I hope to reunite with you on the other side, accompanied by your favorite orange sock and a can of tuna. Summary: a coworker's cat is killed by neighbor's dogs, and the coworker retaliates against the neighbor's family on Christmas Eve.